All right.
Have
Good
at it.
evening, everybody. Welcome to the Peterborough Select Board meeting for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. That's 10/20/2020, if you weren't paying attention. Thank you for your patience while we sorted out some technical difficulties, having trouble going live on all our platforms. As of late, we're currently on Facebook Live, right? We're on the Comcast Channel 22. We have Bill there this evening because we're not all in the room with him. And then we have the Ustream, as usual, on your town's Facebook website opening page. And then we're also on YouTube. So we have Tim Brezovic and Fosh Farashahi working those details out for us tonight. I'm Tyler Ward. With me is fellow Select Board member Bill Taylor, also Ed Youngst, and we have Rodney Bartlett, Town Administrator, Nicole Mac Stay, Deputy Town Administrator, and Chief Walker from our fire rescue is here for an update. Tonight's agenda, we'll start off with Chief Walker. He's going to bring us up to speed on the COVID cases recently hitting town and what the plans are for that, what we recommend and that sort of thing. We'll discuss broadband requests for information. That's been on everybody's radar for the longest time. There's some movement there. We installed a select board email communications platform we're going to discuss. Needs some tweaking, needs some working out. We'll have to figure out what the best way is to let people get in touch with us and how we can respond and that sort of thing. And then is Leo going to join us for the budget review expenditure report? No? Okay. And then we'll discussion about Evans Flats process. We heard about that several meetings ago. Affordable housing project possibly, and then we have some board and committee appointments. Did I miss anything? No. All right. Well, Chief Walker, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be back. So, start out with sort of a COVID update. I mean, in our community, we currently have one active case. I know the state's website is showing us in that 1 to 4 for suppression, but we have one. As pretty much everybody has seen by now, we have 4 members of our organization who tested positive for COVID last week. Just to give you folks a little update on the actual timeline, last Wednesday, one of our members became mildly symptomatic, had a sore throat and a cough, didn't think too much of it, and then we had a fire the night before, attributed it to being up late, wearing a self-contained breathing apparatus and so forth. Thursday, he continued to not feel well, added a stuffy nose into his sore throat and cough, went and was tested and came back positive. So he notified us Thursday that he had tested positive for COVID. We followed the emergency service members COVID-19 unprotected exposure guideline. It was published by the state of New Hampshire. And through that guideline, we determined all members of our organization who had close unprotected contact with him. That came back to 4 folks that had been on duty with him on Sunday day, as well as 3 people who were with him in the cab of the truck going to the fire we had Tuesday night, and 2 other individuals who were close to him at a drill that we had done Tuesday night. All those individuals were immediately placed on quarantine. Quarantine is when an individual stays away from other folks, does not interact with other individuals because they may potentially be infected with the disease. Subsequently, in looking through that, various folks went and were getting tested. On Saturday morning, we were notified that one of the other individuals who had been on duty with him last Sunday had tested positive, and later in that day, a 3rd individual who had been on duty with him tested positive. That changed the number of folks that were on quarantine because now we had other individuals who were in close contact with people who had been positive. And then Sunday morning of the 4th, and so far our final member tested positive for COVID from a test that he had done on Friday. Of the 4 people that did test positive for COVID, of the 4 people that did test positive for COVID, 2 of them are asymptomatic, and 2 had, mild symptoms that, led them to get tested and with their contact. So after we sorted the whole thing out through Saturday and Sunday, we were in contact with the state of New Hampshire folks at DHHS within their, it's called the, get the name right here. So it's their Congregate Settings Investigation Unit, where there are 4 people that work together and are together. We work with them. They concurred with us on the folks that we had made decisions to quarantine. The individuals that tested positive are in isolation. So we're going forward. One thing I can report is subsequently, we have test results back from all of the folks that had any close contact with the folks that have tested positive. No additional individuals have tested positive. So we, again, in working with folks from Department of Health and Human Services, we're relatively confident that we have contained this current outbreak, if you will, to those 4 individuals. The folks that are in quarantine, per the guideline, will remain in quarantine for their 14 days. In New Hampshire, the quarantine is the full 14 days, and there is no ability to test out of that. So even though those individuals have tested negative, they still will remain in quarantine for the 14 days. That brings us up to the 28th of October, which is the last day in quarantine for those folks. So after this one, starting on October 29th, we'll be back to full strength, and not everybody will be out of quarantine. One thing, or a couple things to talk about with this. Based on last night's numbers from the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, there currently are a total of 50 first responders across the state of New Hampshire that are positive for COVID-19, and another 48 first responders who are in quarantine because of those close contacts. So although it's, they're large numbers for us, it unfortunately is something that is, being felt by organizations across the state as we look at that and we go forward. The other thing that it has done, and I mentioned this, I don't know if anybody had a chance to see the interview this morning, or that was done today with WMUR. The other thing it has really done for us is sort of highlighted something that health officials worldwide are talking about, which is people's general level of fatigue. Folks are sort of getting, complacent. And it's, like anything, like the kayaker who stops wearing a life jacket after a couple of years, or, later in the season, you start to get comfortable with where you are and what's going on. So it's really highlighted for us the importance of staying vigilant, of being careful, and of doing that. I know in all of our patient contacts, we are wearing the recommended PPE, which is an N95 respirator, eye protection, gloves, gowns when we have a known case or our prospective, probable case of COVID-19. And it's just that, we had become, in our own day-to-day activities, I think we've become relaxed about it, as a lot of folks are. And again, going forward, as you look at some of the other cases that we have in our communities, these ones and twosies, in our discussions with the folks from DHHS and with Monadnock Community Hospital's infection control preventionist, that is what they're sort of starting to see, is the people that are getting infected with planned encounters, whether it's work events, family events, other social events or gatherings where a group of known people are getting together, and just, we haven't had a problem so far, so we're not going to have a problem now. And, somebody who is, in our case, we believe it was an asymptomatic individual, is spreading that disease to others. So that's where we are now. We don't, as I said in the press release and said today, we really do not anticipate any interruption to our level of service. We don't think there was any issue. Again, we work with Monadnock Community Hospital on the patients that we had transported in and out of there during that 3 or 4 day period where we had some questions. And we and the hospital are both confident that there really is no issue or no other risk there.
Thank you, Chief. So you mentioned that all first responders are, when in contact with customers or sick people, they're wearing their PPE. What about when riding around in vehicles when there's more than one
So again, I think
our-
that's where the complacency has come in. And you
Right.
look at this, and it's industry wide. There's not to name departments, but a large metropolitan department in the state. There are 3, by the way, but one of them currently is dealing with an outbreak in their administrative building and administrative staff. And again, it's something that only a couple of people infected, a number of people quarantined due to the level of being relaxed. One thing I do want to bring up, which I think is important for people to understand from the community, when you look at the Bureau of Infectious Disease Control's policy, there is the option for essential employees to be accepted from the quarantine requirement. So the quarantine requirement both for out-of-state travel as well as contact, and that would allow individuals who have had either have traveled out of state or have confirmed contact to continue to work if they are essential employees, as long as they monitor themselves, continue to wear a mask, and ensure social distancing from others. We made a decision internally here and in talking with administration not to exercise that option. Although we could exercise that option, we felt it very important that particularly we're in nursing care facilities, we're in and out of our hospital all the time, we're working in a relatively close quarters here in our own station, that we didn't take that chance. And even though there is that exception to the rule, we made the decision that we would keep anybody who potentially was exposed and potentially could be infected with with COVID-19 to stay out of our workplace and not interact with individuals in the community.
Okay. Any questions for the chief?
I have one. Just Chief, you can, of the cases that are going on in the quarantines, you can trace them all back to a single source, correct?
Yeah, we believe so. We believe that the one individual who worked in that Sunday was sort of our patient zero, the one who came in with it. He's one of the asymptomatic individuals. So we think, and again, we don't know because there were 5 people who worked that day, 4 of whom tested positive. But in sort of looking at the way the individuals have interacted then and through the past and their other behaviors, it's likely it's that one individual. And again, he was an asymptomatic person. We do screenings. Folks take the temperature. They know not to come in if they have the sniffles, coughs, or anything like that. And again, he was completely and remains to be completely asymptomatic.
And Chief, could you just remind us how long it takes for someone to be exposed and then be positive?
So it does vary, and what I understand is typically when it comes to testing, if you're exposed, really they look at about a minimum of 72, 96 hours or so before testing. But the reason that they do the 14-day quarantine is it can take up to 10 days for an individual. So, if I were to, and that's one thing with, the idea of random testing or testing folks is, I could I could be exposed today, test negative tomorrow. 4 days later, I could develop enough of the virus within myself to be contagious, even without being symptomatic. So, it really, that's why individuals taking responsibility and the social distancing, the hand washing, and all the rest of that is so important. And it's been highlighted for us.
Right. And just to reiterate, our townhouse does have a mask requirement policy, correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
What does that mean, mask requirement policy? What does it mean for people working in the townhouse?
So when you are unable to maintain social distancing from people who are customers coming into the building, particularly, for instance, the town clerk's office, all people going into the town clerk's office are required to wear a mask. The town clerk is sitting behind plexiglass. Anyone else who's coming to do business in the town is typically coming in by appointment. They're required to wear a mask, and the town staff that they're interacting with will be wearing a mask as well, because we're not able to maintain that social distancing because our spaces are pretty small in here. For the most part, you know, if you come into the townhouse, you'll see, if you see me sitting in my office by myself, I won't be wearing a mask if you just turn the corner without me knowing you're coming. But I'll put a mask on, you know, once I see that you're there. So we're really just encouraging people to, you know, when they're interacting with the public, interacting with people from outside their regular, you know, the regular daily operation, that they always wear a mask. Police officers are all required to wear masks when they're interacting with the public. The same goes, of course, as Chief Walker just said, for fire rescue, and so on. So we are taking it very seriously inside the building and inside the town.
And if you're interacting with each other employees or town officials, then should people wear masks?
We leave that, so when you're working, for instance, Ally and I and Rodney all sit, you know, in separate offices, but close to each other during the day. We won't be wearing a mask when it's just the three of us sitting in our offices. And that'll be the case in some other closed office areas.
Yeah, no, that probably makes sense.
Yeah, you know, but we do take precautions, you know, we take precautions when we're not at work. It's essentially, it's the same kind of arrangement that you'll make with your family members that you don't necessarily live with. You know, those family members, you know, that you interact with on a regular basis, you know, you won't wear a mask when they're around them. Depending on your work environment, you may have the same thing, or you may have a work environment where it makes a lot more sense for everyone to wear a mask. For instance, if I had another person working in this office with me, and you know, we were going in and out all the time, it would probably make a lot more sense for us to wear masks while we're in the office. So it's really on a case-by-case basis, but we are doing our best to maintain social distancing, and when we can't, we're wearing masks.
I think, and maybe this isn't the spot to talk about it, but you know, I've seen the emails coming from people about masks. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of them, but you know, requesting that we take a stronger stand about masks. And I think the complacency really and the fatigue is, like it or not, it's a real factor that's happening, and the numbers nationwide and in the state, including this state, are indicative of an increase going on. And now certain states are overwhelmed. And as leaders, you know, and I know the whole mask thing is controversial, but, you know, I've been downtown a few times walking around. I try to wear a mask when I'm walking around because there's other people, but I see plenty of people not wearing them. People tell me that when they go to Shaw's, they see people not wearing them. If we want to try to get a handle on this, I think we have to, you know, unless it's against the law, and I'm a little confused about that. I read all this stuff about what we can do and what we can't do and what other towns do, but I think political leaders, even at our level, have to have the courage and to do whatever they can to make it clear that the expectation is to wear masks and social distance, or else we see an example right here how easy it can spread. I have pretty strong feelings about it. I admit it's personal, but I mean, every time I even see my daughter, you know, she comes here a lot, but I don't know who she's seeing. I mean, it's even taking a chance. If we can minimize that, I think we have some obligation to review maybe you know, what we can do to make it pretty mandatory that if you're in a building, a public building or a private business, you have to wear a mask. And some businesses, like I was at the Baker Station, I think, and they have a sign that says if you don't have a mask, you can't come in. I wish we could do that. I don't know if we can or not, but I would be in favor of it.
You certainly can do that as a select board. I think it's important to keep in mind that even if you did have a mask ordinance in place, it would not have stopped any of the employees who tested positive with COVID-19 from having contracted COVID-19.
You know, I understand that. I
Yeah.
do. I mean, it's still, people are still going to get it. But I think if you can minimize it by getting people to, you know, to realize that this is still with us. You know, it's not going to go away. It's not, and I don't want to be one of those people who tries to deny that it's here and that it's going to go away next week. You know, I feel strongly that we should make it as clear as we can that we expect to see people in Peterborough when they're on streets and when they're in buildings around other people, they're wearing masks or they're social distancing.
So what you can do as a select board, if you were to choose to put in a mask ordinance, you would be doing so under the powers given to the board by RSA 147.1. And it's actually the board and the health officer, so Chief Walker. And what that would allow you to do is to place a requirement on businesses that they must, that their customers must be wearing masks when they conduct business inside their space, you know, whether it's a store, a restaurant, office space, what have you. And then if it was found that they were allowing customers into their space without wearing a mask, you would fine the business. It would not be the customer who would be getting fined. It would be the business owner who would be getting fined. The business owner, just like today, would still be, you know, it would be on them to enforce the ordinance. And they would need to, you know, require the customer to wear a mask when visiting their office or their restaurant or what have you. If they, you know, the customer refused, they would have to ask that customer to leave. If the customer then refused to leave, then, you know, they would have the option, just like they do today, to call the police and ask to have that person removed if it were to come to that. And we've certainly seen that. If you've, you know, saw the police logs from a couple months ago, there was a case where someone refused to comply with Conval staff and wear a mask while they're in the administration office at one of the schools. When they refused to wear a mask or refused to leave the premises, they were removed by the police. So it's really not a significant change. It just, you know, puts an extra penalty on the business owner for not requiring their customers to comply.
I mean, and I know that's a dilemma. I mean, I don't think anybody's looking to, maybe if we said they have to do it, more of them will do it voluntarily without having to fine them or anything. I'm not looking to get people in trouble. I'm looking to try to make sure that tide that we see happening isn't as likely or to be as bad as it is someplace else. It's not going to be that way here. And I think that there's precedents. I mean, there's restaurants and bars and places you can't go in without shoes. You can't go in without shoes and socks. I mean, this is just another thing that, you know, I have to admit, it's hard for me to understand why there's such a controversy about this, because I don't like wearing them either, but I do, because I think it helps me a little bit maybe, but it helps in case I am infected, and I believe that I could easily be infected just like anybody else, that I'm not going to at least spread it to somebody else. So.
I mean, we started off, I don't know when the last round of this was that we were working on talking about ordinances, and that's when, you know, the mask up campaign started with all the signs coming into town, and signs were delivered to all the businesses and restaurants that said that, I don't remember exactly what they said, but they were required or you need to, and we were supportive of anybody wanting to require masks going into any of their businesses. I think and the chief, you can chime in on this. I think where the biggest problem is in people's houses where we can't actually regulate it. It's not like people catching it at Shaw's. It's not people catching it at Roy's. It's people getting it inside of their own homes, and the vigilance and, you know, the concern, as I think I might have said a couple of months ago, it really comes down to individual responsibility. Chief?
No, you're not wrong. I mean, what I'm hearing through both the folks at Health and Human Services as well as locally through Monadnock Community Hospital is that's where it's coming from. It's not, again, it's not, you're not passing somebody in the restaurant or in a grocery store on and picking it up. That isn't true in all areas of the state or in all areas of the country or world, but that's what we're experiencing here. The other thing to reiterate something that Nicole mentioned was, if you look at the Safer at Home 2.0 guideline, it still requires that in those retail establishments that your staff are wearing masks, that your customers are wearing masks. So those requirements are still there. The business owner has the right to refuse service to anybody that wears a mask. The only change that a local ordinance would do is say, hey, we as the town of Peterborough can now find them. You know, Chief Gennard could tell you that he and I have fielded, not so much recently, but when this whole thing first started, the Safer at Home and the reopening of businesses, we fielded a number of complaints from individuals who went into businesses and saw staff that were not wearing masks, felt that the businesses were not doing enough to have their customers wearing masks. And the existing process, the enforcement comes through Department of Public Health or through the Attorney General's office. So what the ordinance would do is it wouldn't necessarily change the process by which an individual who feels that somebody isn't following the guideline and wearing a mask, or a business, it would just change the way that it's enforced. It now would be a violation of a town ordinance. So, you know, our police department would be the one writing the citation and doing it. When you look at, you know, Manchester last night, I don't know all the details because it hasn't been finalized, but their mask ordinance came out of committee, if you will, and they took the civil penalty out of it. So there is no civil penalty with their ordinance that they're looking to have their alderman and mayor enact. You know, Nashua was the first community in the state to have a mask ordinance. And now we look at Nashua is one of the places with the fastest growing rates of COVID-19 in the state of New Hampshire. So there are, you know, it's hard to say how this would play out if we were to do it.
Well, I feel like we attempted the mask up collaboration with the hospital, Manana Community Hospital. We put the signs out. We got all the restaurants on board or businesses to hang that sign. And but then we, you know, there are people out there that think this isn't real, and so the signs got stolen not too long ago. And just as Ed said, you know, people are becoming complacent, and we've all seen it, we've all witnessed it, and it's clear that the personal responsibility aspect isn't there for everyone, and there's some people are adamant that they're not gonna because they don't believe it's real. It's clear that it's real, and we've been very lucky that, you know, only one resident maybe, but 4 out of an organization that's what, roughly 60 people, that's a 7% in, you know, immediately like that, immediate jump. So, you know, I'm at the point where I've kept my feeling of wanting a mask ordinance at bay because I've been convinced that we can do this another way. We don't have to be the hammer down on this, but it's kind of clear to me that, you know, maybe we're not good as a species to be able to do that, and we are heading into colder months and seeing it rise everywhere else around the country, around the world. You know, Europe is bouncing back up again, and if it means that the select board says, okay, we have a mask ordinance in town, that will call enough attention to if it does nothing but call attention to the fact that some people are being complacent, then that'll be it. And if we don't give out any fines, that would be great. That would just be great. But if we had to, lessons would be learned from that. So I'm really leaning towards taking some action on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's very few businesses that this would really affect, but I think those are the businesses where people are going without masks. Shaw's, the drugstores, places like that, where lots of people go. Everybody should be wearing masks. When I was in Florida, just before we left, I went to Shaw's because I was having something done in my house down there. And I mean, to not Shaw's, to Lowe's. And I expected that everybody was going to be wearing masks in there, much to my surprise and shock. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even gone there. People were not wearing masks. And I was so adamant about it that I tracked down the store manager and spoke to him about it. And he said, well, you know, we like people to wear masks, but we don't want to make them. That's the problem. There are people that don't have the courage to say you got to wear a mask or you don't come in. I think that this could help motivate them to do a better job of it. Personally, I think we should do it. And I'm not for looking to make lots of fines either. I think the fact that if we did say it, it would give them cover. They could say, well, you know, the select board has that rule. I have to do it. You have to wear a mask, period. And then at least if somebody had a complaint, they would have, you know, something to do, something that they could do about it by getting in touch with the police, for example. I think we should really, I'd like to see us do it. I agree with Tyler.
Okay. One last thing that I didn't mention, but of course is important, is that anyone who has a health restriction is not required to wear a mask. And if they say that they have a limitation based on their health, you know, which is why they can't wear a mask, we can't ask them for documentation. They can't be required to show anything. You just have to accept that as being fact. So that is one of those issues that we've run into. We've even run into it here at the town clerk's office. We ran into it at voting, where folks, you know, said, I can't wear a mask. And you have to accommodate that some way. That's why in the past, when we have talked to business owners, some business owners have been hesitant to require their customers to wear a mask because of that, because they don't want to lose, you know, the business. They don't want to not be able to support the people who can't wear it for health reasons. Now, having said that, there are, of course, other ways to manage that. So that is certainly something that you can consider when you look at a draft ordinance.
I think the draft should allow for that. I mean, we don't want.
It will have to.
Yeah.
The draft will have to. Yeah. There's really no escaping that. All right. So what I sounds like you want to see a draft ordinance. We'll start working on that and send that around. It will, of course, have to go to a public hearing. It can't be adopted without a public hearing. So we'd probably be looking to hold a public hearing after the election. And I'm not sure what day that would be.
Are we doing this just because of personal feelings, or are we doing it because there's evidence in town of community spread COVID-19?
There's evidence around the country, around the world that things are ramping up, and that, you know, that's where it's heading. That's how I feel anyway.
That's how I feel about it also.
I agree with you that there's plenty of evidence for it. But also Nashua was the first city to mandate masks, and they have the highest rising cases in the state. My concern, and you know, I'm happy to look at a draft ordinance, and it really doesn't matter because you already got to either one anyway. So what I say makes no difference, but my concern, and I'll say it for the record, is that it will have the opposite effect that you're hoping for. And I think that it's more of the people that are gonna be saying, let's stick it to the man and not wear a mask now, even though we were before.
Okay,
And I think that's what's going on in Manchester and Nashua and
yeah. I'm not interested in people looking to stick it to the man and cowing to them. So that's their issue, not mine. I'm kind of over that excuse. It's childish, it's immature, whatever. People live in communities. You look out for each other. That's how
One little thing we can do. I realize it's not going to stop it completely, but I'd rather do it now than wait until it does hit here, like it is in North Dakota and other places. And I hate that we have a lot of elderly people here in town. They're the most vulnerable. Fortunately, we haven't had a lot of cases in any of those areas yet, but it doesn't mean it couldn't happen. And this may be short-lived. I mean, if we really get a virus next year sometime that works, we'll get
vaccination.
If just to interject for a second, I think I don't disagree with conceptually and with sending the message. I guess the question I have, again, from public health and from an enforcement standpoint, is what does this change in how an individual behaves? And is it going to create more anxiety? And I'll give an anecdotal. Last night, or excuse me, Sunday night, when Ben Conan put the story was published in the Ledger transcript, within 15 minutes, I had an email from a resident in town who said, I saw one of your members in the post office yesterday. Are they one of the ones who should be quarantined? And I just have this fear that, if a family is sitting at a bench in Putnam Park, is someone going to be calling Peterborough police because none of them are wearing masks? Or if I'm walking my dog on Old Town Farm Road by myself, is the neighbor going to go by and call the police because I'm out in public not wearing a mask? And that is never the intention of the ordinance. There already is a mechanism for business owners to restrict customers to wearing masks only. There is a mechanism for enforcement, and I don't know what a town-wide ordinance or a local ordinance would do to change people's behavior or to increase the incidence of mask wearing, especially when you compare it to the burden of enforcement. And quite frankly, I think the pettiness we're going to see among some of our own residents. That's just my personal opinion, the same as everyone else has.
So is the fear that if we institute an ordinance and this pettiness arises and we have to retract the ordinance, then the petty will have won? What is the concern? I'm looking at it like clearly we're not doing enough to remind people or to educate people that, because we're all people are getting complacent. So this is the way I look at it. This is the next step in raising awareness.
Well, maybe
a serious education campaign first. And this is as an aside, every morning I'm on the COVID, the Conval School District's COVID monitoring team. And we're talking about this because Conval School District is incredibly fortunate that they have no positive cases amongst their staff and their students. They are one of the only school districts in the state that can claim that. And that is truly because of the efforts that they have taken around sports, around separating the students into cohesive groups through the use of pods, around changing the school bus routes. It is through what they are doing. However, we're starting to realize that those folks, just like all the rest of us, are getting a little bit tired of this. So one of the things we're looking at is really ramping up an education campaign community-wide to let people know or remind people. Like, it's not let them know. I think they all know it. It's to remind them. It's to get it in the front of their minds. And I don't think nobody is going to do the wrong thing intentionally when they know it's the wrong thing, or very few people are. I shouldn't say no, and very few people are. And I think we need to reiterate and remind and highlight to people how effective we were as a community in the past and have continued to be, and what it's going to take to do that. I don't think throwing a new rule at it is going to encourage behavior. I mean, enforcement is sort of the last step. I mean, you know, you have engineering, education, and enforcement. And I really think that we should try other things first. And that's, again, that's just, maybe it's my own overly optimistic faith in humanity. I don't know.
Okay, so we have, at best, after the election, we would maybe have an ordinance to review, and then we'd have to set another meeting for a public hearing once we
Yes.
accepted that ordinance, right? So we're kind of down the line with any kind of ordinance anyway. Well, let's see what the educational aspect can do in the meantime. And if we see that, you know, more people, so how do you gauge if more people are, how do you quantify if more people are actually wearing their masks when it's brought to their attention?
Well, I think if we continue to, our corner of the world continues to defy, if you will, what is going on around us. We've been very, I mean, Southwestern New Hampshire has done an incredibly good job of keeping the cases low. You know, even when you look at the number of our residents that frequent Manchester, Merrimack, you know, Concord, Nashua, work in those communities, or even work south of the border in northern Worcester County. And I think if we can continue with that, with our trend and with our you know, overall vigilance, I think that, you know, that will indicate, and I'm not saying don't necessarily start the process and get additional feedback. You know, we're six opinions here. I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking that I think that should be our last resort.
Well, I think I agree with Tyler. We have time. Let's proceed with trying to get some kind of draft. The press may pick up what we talked about here tonight. That may help get the message out that we're serious about this. And what other efforts that you or others want to do to more educate. I mean, we do have those signs. We do have, you know, some of that, but you know, I'm okay with that. I mean, we if it's going to take that long to get a draft, well, let's see what else happens. But you know, if I continue to hear that people are going, particularly in these big places where lots of people are without masks, and that's where I'm really concerned. I think maybe the local businesses are doing a better job because they're locally owned. I don't know. They're not big corporations, but I don't have a lot of faith in those big organizations that they could enforce this if they want to already. And I wouldn't have to hear, and whoever else shops at some of these places wouldn't have to hear that they saw people in there without masks.
Fair enough.
Unfortunately, we can't just say it only applies to certain places. So we have to make it the way that we've kind of described.
I think we just got to keep an eye on evidence of community spread COVID-19 and work through the process.
Right. Yeah, and we said that last time, and now within a day or four fire rescue people.
But I think the thing I think to look at this is, although the number of four goes back to a single incident in one day with 5 people who are in a room together. It's not, again, what we're seeing happen, it is not a random, it's an intentional meeting of individuals. It's not somebody passing somebody in a supermarket or a street or in a restaurant. We have not seen that in our area. And it goes back to the family gatherings and the corporate parties and all the rest of this, is where they're starting to see these problems. You know, if you look at the larger cohorts, whether it's the outbreaks they've had in Maine and Vermont, or even some others here in the state of New Hampshire, they're going back to a wedding reception, or to a corporate gathering, or a business meeting. And you know, that's where they are. It's intentional gatherings of people that are causing this. And that's where the mask ordinance will not will not have an impact. You're not going to mandate people wear a mask in their own home when they're entertaining their guests.
Okay, let's see, as part of the educational aspect of this, that statement right there about the gatherings and limiting numbers of people and policing yourself and your family and groups and that sort of thing. That's where we need to really emphasize it, right? Okay. Are we done with that?
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. It was a healthy discussion to have. It's not going to go away for a while, and we just got to keep on it, and we'll find a way to maintain our low levels or keep at what we're doing. So thank you, Chief. Thanks for the update.
If anything else comes up or any questions around this or ours, if anything changes within our own department, I will absolutely let you folks know and let everybody else know.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Good night, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Next up, we have an RFI for broadband.
Yes, so what you have in your packet is a draft of a letter that will go out to all the broadband providers in our area. This is the very first step that you are required to take when going out for a bond for broadband infrastructure build out. So this is something that, of course, has been on our mind since 2006-07, and simply has not gotten a whole lot of traction, at least not voluntarily by the broadband providers themselves. So we're looking at a process to try to meet them halfway and pull them along to full coverage of the community.
Great. Does someone want to read that so people know what we're talking about, or they just have it on faith that something's happening?
Would you like me to read the whole thing? I can do that.
How about we just post it on the website?
It is posted on the website as part of the packet, but we'll certainly, once we actually send out the letters, we'll have a notice posted as well.
All right. Great. So there's movement on that.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. So if you're in favor of that, Karen will be sending those out this week.
Yep, all in favor.
Yeah, that's good. Good
Yes.
move.
Good move.
Thank you. Next up, the select board email communications. Nicole, you want to briefly summarize how we got here, what we've been doing?
Sure.
The struggle we've had with.
So
Yeah.
In recent years, email has more and more become the preferred form of communication from residents to the members of the select board. In the past, the select board would receive those communications as individuals from each of the, from whomever wanted to email them. And they would sometimes go to every member of the select board, which unfortunately is a problem because pursuant to RSA 91A, those communications that go to the entire board, not just a minority, like a single member of the board, are considered public and should be part of the select board's permanent public record, so that other members of the community, residents, so forth, have the opportunity to examine them, see what the select board has been discussing, at least as pertains to town business and so forth. One of the other issues was a concern that administration was receiving emails on behalf of the select board, and some people were concerned that they weren't getting to the board. So we took a step to create a select board email address, which is selectboard@peterborough.nh.gov, to publish that, along with a notice on the town's website that stated that the select board would receive the emails, that they would communicate directly to town administration with regards to their opinions on it. Town administration would then take those thoughts, put them together, try to create a cohesive message, which would then be reviewed by the select board as individuals before being sent out to the original emailer, and then put into the selectmen's meeting packet. And that is the process that we have been following to more or less, which has been more or less successful. Of course, this year, since we had just put this new process into place within the last year, this year with COVID-19, the concerns about policing and racial justice and the many other hot topics that we've been discussing. There's been an awful lot of email between residents and the select board, and then of course by extension the town administration and the residents. So this has been complicated. It's been a complicated policy for us to manage. It's certainly not, I'm not suggesting that we do away with it. I'm not suggesting any particular changes. I think that needs to come from the select board. But it's certainly, you know, with trying to maintain transparency through right to know, and making sure that we're able to respond as necessary. It definitely is complicated and takes a lot of time to manage.
Certainly, and I'd also like to add that for a time the board would receive either individual emails or as the board, and we have a tendency to want to answer immediately, and you know, you'd have three of us answering, and there wasn't really any way to communicate with each other because the three of us can't communicate with each other outside of these public meetings regarding town issues. And so in an effort to make sure everything is above board and transparent, as you just mentioned, we ran that by, or I came up with that plan that's on there for the process for sending the emails to us, and then we would then give town admin our opinions on that matter in order to have us have a cohesive message without having to wait for the next meeting to then discuss that particular topic in that meeting, if we felt that we could take care of it via email in this chain. And so that, you know, that's really where we are with that. And I think it has worked fairly well in that manner because you know, otherwise, once one or two of us answer those emails, that then is in essence a public meeting, and it wasn't a posted public meeting, and so it just we really felt we'd rather be above board and go about it, you know, this way. And I will agree with what you said. We have had more emails than I've ever experienced in all these years, and it has been challenging. It's been difficult. I've been spending several hours a night trying to keep up with it all, and we don't want to leave people hanging. And you know.
I think where we get into trouble is when it becomes a constant back and forth, and there's, you know, email after email after email after email. And I don't know about anybody else, but I already get hundreds of emails a day, like for work. And when it's just going over the same thing over and over and over again, it gets tough. I think I see and share the concerns from, you know, our citizens that want to ask a question, and they want to make sure that the select board is you know, on top of it. And that's fair and it's right. I just wish there was a way that we could make sure that whatever the topic is rises to the level of needing to be addressed by the entire select board. If there was some threshold to quantify that, it would be great. I know that's tough, but
Yeah, I've been surprised, you know, because 7 years prior, when I was a selectman on the board, I have to say that I got very few emails. Usually it was the same 2 or 3 people that I knew well that would write to me only and ask about something, and I tried to answer them or I called them back. But now when I see these, it says to me, and I do think it's all related to what's happening in our country, that there's distrust of any government at any level. That's what the topics I've seen so far in the short time I've been back on the board are just a few subjects, limited, where people might not understand what the select board's job is and what it isn't, and who makes decisions and who doesn't about certain things. Those kind of emails are probably the most annoying, you know, but it seems to be spreading beyond those couple of things now, where we're supposed to keep people almost personally informed about where things are. You know, that's not something we can always do. I guess in the short term, we've got to live with it. I mean, maybe when a few things happen, maybe here or elsewhere, that might calm people down. I think you know, I participated in one of these community conversations, and you know, I'm glad I did, because I listened to a lot of people that are very upset about certain things, and it's the times, and I guess we can't solve all of those things here in Peterborough, but we certainly can listen and do the best we can to make sure that they don't happen here, and I think that's what we're trying to do. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's puzzling to me too to see it, but we're not alone. It's all I can say. It's a trend right now, and I don't know where it's going to lead, but I think the system that's in place is okay. Personally, I mean, it would be foolish to stop it now. We've opened it up, and we all get the same email, and you know, and there's a process. I think the only question is, you know, I know originally Tyler was having to answer them all. Now I see that Nicole is doing at least some of them. The most recent series she did, but you know, once we have that settled, who's supposed to do it, or who can delegate somebody else to do it, then I think we have to stick with it myself.
Yeah, I don't know, like, maybe just state for the record, or like, I get what you're saying, Ed, about, you know, the feeling about politicians and so forth. I never really assumed myself to be a politician. Just a guy that lives in Peterborough that's trying to do what's best for the town. There is no kickback possibility in this town. There's nothing that we can do to navigate the system so that all of a sudden we come out on the other side rich. So
and I agree with you, and I think that's how we all feel. We're regular people. We're not politicians. Thank God I never got into that. At one time I thought I was interested in it, but I'm not.
I have no aspirations beyond this board seat. I promise.
And I think I have to say, I'm privileged to be on this board, because I think it's a very good board, and I have the fullest trust and confidence in both of you guys. So.
Good, me too. I have that same to you guys.
Okay, so it sounds like we'll keep this process for now, and maybe work on an automatic reply so people know that they will get an answer eventually.
Unfortunately, we have not been able to figure out a way to set up an auto reply. I've had Cole and Fosh both look at it, and because it's a distribution list, it does not have its own email attached to it. selectboard@peterborough.nh.gov is not actually an email address or an email account. What it points to is essentially a script that when it receives an email to our email server, it automatically sends it to the 5 people you see here, myself, Rodney, and yourselves. So it's not really a true email account, so you can't set an auto reply onto it. So
Okay.
that unfortunately is a little bit more complicated.
Okay, so
Um,
that, as chair, it falls on me then, I think, to send that acknowledgement of receipt of the email with that same statement to everybody. It's gonna seem cookie cutter to people that inquire over and over again, but it'll just be the process so they know that the board, the chair, we have received it. We're not ignoring it. It may
Yeah.
take some time to answer, but we'll get to it. Is
I mean,
that fair?
yes, I mean, I still have Fosh and Cole looking into it to see if there are other options. It doesn't seem like there are many, at least no really good options. But I'll get back together with them and see if we can come up with something maybe a little bit more streamlined.
Okay. Well, we're trying our best to listen to people and answer them and make decisions, that sort of stuff. All right, thanks. Next, old business, where we have our budget review and expenditure report. Quite a lengthy document there. Did everybody read it?
I looked at it.
Yeah, that's
So
quite good.
This is the first of its kind, that we've had in many years now. Leo and Shannon particularly really worked on this, using our new system, BSNA. She was able to get it to generate a report, and then put that into a format that is really, I think, very, very easy to read and understand. It's really very nice and clear. There were a couple of small errors that happened as the data was being translated into the report format. Those were pointed out, and she has that fixed now. So for the next iteration of this that comes out at the end of Q2, hopefully it's gonna just be perfect, and it's gonna be one of those nice reports that you can just click a button, generate and publish.
So that's always going to be my question. Is it a lot easier than before where we had to put stuff into spreadsheets and
Oh yeah,
because we couldn't use the report writer? And
no,
it sounds like this new system that we invested in is really doing a much better job, which I think is wonderful. I did like it. I mean, I liked looking at it. You can see actuals and budget, and it even made us be more familiar with all the various types of accounts we have, and I think it's great.
It is great, and this is a great report. Thanks to the finance department for pulling this together, and it's exciting to be going forward. This is what we'll see. Yeah, great.
I don't know if you have any questions on it. If you do, if you don't have them right on top of your head right now, that's fine. Feel free to email me, and I can make sure we get answers for you.
Is it expected we might get those kind of reports for the budget process?
So for the budget process, we have a slightly different format, but yes, they do come out of BSNA. They're nice and clear. They're very easy to follow. I think you've seen the reports that Leo's done for CIP, right, Ed?
Yes, they have, yes. And
Yeah.
those are really good, and they're being very well received by the CIP people too. They have all kinds of praise for Leo and his staff.
Yeah, they've done a really great job. Leo absolutely loves his spreadsheets, but what he loves most about his spreadsheets is making them so that they're clear and easy for people to understand. And he's really done a great job with that.
And that's important. Yeah, great.
Those are much easier to read, those new CIP ones, and it's great.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thanks again to the finance department and Leo. So now, Nicole, you want to briefly bring us up a little reminder of where we were? I can't remember. It was at least a month ago. We had Hope Taylor and Peter LaRoche in discussing Evans Flats potential affordable housing project.
Almost 2.5 months ago now. So so Hope and Peter LaRoche made a presentation to the select board on August 4th. They were bringing forward an idea for the development of a portion of the Evans Flats property that is accessible off of Evans Road. That's the portion of the property that the highway uses for storage of materials in snow in the wintertime, that sort of thing. So that That proposal had the town leasing, entering into a long-term lease. Not entirely sure how that would exactly work, but there would be a lease, and then contractors would come in, build their own houses on the property, and they would be required to be workforce, directed at the workforce, or working class housing, essentially not lower income, but moderately priced. After that, it took a closer look at what can be done with town-owned land. There, of course, the first question that the select board would have to answer is, does the select board want to do anything with that property? Simple yes or no. And then if you do want to do something with the property, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to retain ownership of it? Do you want to look into entering into a long-term lease? Or do you want to look at selling it? All three of those options have a whole bunch of different questions or steps along the way that would need to be addressed. Haven't done a whole lot of investigation into the property itself in terms of how the town came to own the property, if there are any deed restrictions on it. So again, once that first question is answered by the select board, whether or not they want to do something with it, then we would explore other things such as what can be done with it. And so that's, I'm sorry, just to wrap up, that's just what I laid out in the memo that I included in your packet.
Right, and you did mention that in the past, there have been discussions about this particular property and what could be done. There've been studies and nothing has come to fruition.
No.
When they first brought that up, they were talking about a lease, or were they talking about the town giving them the land or possibly selling? I don't remember the lease in the first part. Not that that makes any difference for tonight's discussion. Is that something that came up later on, the lease?
It may not have come up in the presentation, but it has come up in their communications, in that group's communications with town staff.
All right. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has ever dealt with a land lease before, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Right.
I mean, and so that property, we'd be, no matter what, lease, purchase, or donation, no matter what, that portion of that property would have to be legally subdivided off, correct?
Yes.
No matter which of those three options we would want to do?
Yes.
That's something I didn't realize before. So there's a challenge.
That is the same property that the highway garage, the community center, everything else sits on, so.
So we can't, like, for me, the lease option is, that's not something that I think would be a smart idea. Maybe somebody else knows more about it than me. The purchase or donation, I think in fairness to anybody that would want to look at it, we can't just pick one person to donate it to. So if we're going to do anything with it, then we have to offer it for sale. So that the question, and for us to offer it for sale, it really has to be subdivided first, correct?
I believe so, but that's something that we would have to explore. Yeah.
I mean, you could do a sale pending a subdivision, final subdivision, but without knowing if it's even possible right this second, it's impossible for us to say. Because we don't know if it can be broken off legally. And if it were to be broken off, what would the options be left for that chunk of land, right? So.
Did you say that the town uses that currently for something? Snow?
We do. It's kind of a passive use, really. We use it to, I think, Rodney, tell me if I'm wrong, but we use it for snow storage, the snow that we pick up in the winter time from the downtown. I believe we dump the snow there. Is it, anyone want to jump in?
Yes, that is our site that once the DPW or highway garage yard is full from snow pickup, we go there. And we end up there every year at one time or another. The other use, we've had it for construction material storage. The classic example was the reconstruction of Union Street. Much of the pipe and basins and that type of thing was stored there. So when you look at potential reconstructions in the downtown, Elm Street, et cetera, that lot does get some use. It doesn't mean we can't find other locations, but as for town-owned property, that is the most convenient.
So I was going to ask, so that's the most convenient for dumping snow there because it's coming generally from downtown,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So is it that much further since the fire station would not be going up near the wastewater treatment facility? Is that much further to truck that stuff up to that spot where the fun bags are? The sewage
Yeah,
bags,
Sludge bags.
sludge bags.
sludge bags, yeah.
I think there's a big enough space up there to back a truck in, back several hundred trucks in to dump snow.
But is it economical to be trucking snow that far? Is it that far? That's what I'm wondering.
When we looked at that option, when we were considering the highway garage going to the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, right, right, highway garage.
We looked at it would essentially for snow pickup, triple the need of trucks. You still get it done in one night. The snow blower, particularly the new one, can certainly keep up with that many trucks. But that additional distance to get there, turn around and come back is almost, believe it or not, 3 times longer than going right up to Elm Street,
Right,
Evans Flats.
worried about that.
Yeah, as much as I would want to be able to, we've been hearing, when I was on the planning board for those, I think, full 3 years that I was the voting member, it was like constantly people clamoring about, this workforce housing. I even once was a kind of unofficial advisor of that little group that was working on it at the time, and several of them are still involved. I'd like to see us be able to help them with something, but not at the cost of, inhibiting the work of Public Works. That's why I think I asked that question. I don't know if there's any other parcels of land in town that town owns that might be better for them, but it would be nice to participate in a project like that. I think it would be good for the town, but I don't think I'd want to do it to the expense of inhibiting in any way the Public Works operation.
Certainly not triple the trucking expense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and just Ed alluded to it. I'd like to remind everybody that this was a group. It was a subcommittee of the Economic Development Authority focused on finding solutions for affordable housing in town, and they've been working on this for quite some time, and they came up with what sounds like kind of a really neat idea. But we have some kind of big hurdles now to jump over, and certainly the idea and the concept is worth pursuing, but now, but how do we do it? And is this the best spot for it, or yeah?
So what do we do?
If I could jump in, I've got a list of some of the things that we've talked about. I think if you give us some time to go through those and really identify any of the limitations, particularly the deed restrictions, because there were some associated when the Armory and the Highway Department went in on those parcels.
Right.
I think give us some time to go through that, a better look at the setbacks for the wetlands, make sure that water and sewer is accessible there. I believe it is. We can also do a quick look for other locations because we've done that before. And I can also look at potential other options for the DPW use that may be nearby.
Yeah, I would not, it's up to you, but maybe that's the first thing to look at is the DPW, because if that's a big deal for them and a big cost for the town, it may not be worth the effort to go through every other bit of research. But I don't know, I'm just asking, I guess, is if.
Find out what the deed restrictions are.
Yeah.
That answers most of the questions right there, right?
Yeah.
And I would also like to add is that when this group started looking at Evans Flats, we were also proposing moving the DPW up to the wastewater treatment plant. So there's been a lot of things that have gone on during this process. So it's, and, you know, on our end, to step back and make sure what the limitations, if there are any, with this proposed site.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, great. So nobody's sleeping on this. It's actively being investigated and pursued. Thank you. Anything else on our agenda? We don't have any minutes to approve. Oh yeah, board and committee appointments. No minutes to approve, but I would like to point out, I don't know if I mentioned Ally Kreutz is taking minutes this evening for us, as she always does, and we'll get these eventually. So we have 6 people either being reappointed or appointed to a couple of boards. Library Board of Trustees, we'll have Elizabeth Reinhardt as an alternate. That's Libby. Gregory Kriebel, another alternate, and Debra Caplan, another alternate. And for our Master Plan Steering Committee, Ivy Vann, Cathy Lanigan, and Emily Mann as full members. Do we have a motion to appoint these wonderful volunteers?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Great. And we've all worked with each of these people, and you know, they thank them for their work. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That's how everything gets done. Well, most things get done, right, Ronnie? Volunteer work. Anything else? Any other business? Any news? Any good news? Anybody? Nobody has any good news?
Well, did you read in the paper, or I guess it wasn't on TV, but read in the paper about our visit from the governor the other day, where people from surrounding towns, businesses, and all over the state legislature were singing the praises of our one and only Rodney Bartlett.
Right.
And the general consensus in that meeting or briefing or whatever you want to call it was that project wouldn't be happening and wouldn't exist at all if it weren't for Rodney. So
Yes, I agree. And that's the good part about what happened at that. And I wish I could have attended just for Rodney, but I think I just was being myself and cautious about being inside a building with up to 30 people. So
I don't think even Rodney saw it coming that there was going to be that many people happy with him.
Never happened before.
well, it's well deserved because that's such an important project.
Well, it's huge. And it's the first of its kind in the state, which is even more important to note. And then we took a walk down to and oversaw or looked over the bridge and the library projects, which, you know, is pretty impressive to check out. So that's all good news. Great new water source on its way. That's huge.
Well, it looks like for sure the library, they'll be able to continue right through the winter. I mean, they had roofing material up there the other day when I was down there looking, and it looks, I don't know about the bridge. You know, I try to figure out what are they really doing there, but it's a complex operation between that. And then I see people working maybe on the wall over there. It's a lot going on.
Yeah, great work.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. All right. Does this bring us to a close?
I think so.
All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Night.